Hello and welcome to HT Auto. I'm Shubhadeep, and I once again hope that you and your family members are keeping safe and are healthy. Um, on that note, whoever said one can't possibly be master of all trade clearly hasn't met our guest for today. She is someone who, wait for it, is an aviator, an entrepreneur, a professional car racer, and a supercar enthusiast. And now, Shana Parmeshwar is also the woman behind India's longest racetrack that's coming up. Shana, thank you for taking the time out and speaking to us. How used to are you to these long drawn introductions?
Um, I don't know. I just, my name's a good start on its own. I think that has a good imposition of who I am and the stuff I do. But I'm getting used to it now. I'm always adding a plus one here and there to try and do more. I've always believed that life's too short not to do enough. So that's me.
All right. Before we take a deep dive into all of what you've achieved, let's start with that very interesting bit about India's longest racetrack. I mean, what is it all about? Let our viewers know how it's coming up, has the construction started, and also take us through what led to this whole idea of having something like this here in the country.
Well, it's this has been a bit of a secret project, and we've kept it quite hush hush so far, at least, just because we just didn't want to make all that noise and all that drama and have nothing happen. So we just thought, you know what, we'll just keep it quiet and we'll let the project kind of speak for itself. And this has been, I don't know, in the works for a couple of years. My partner Anush, who also is a really crucial part of it. There's only two of us. He handles all the construction and the development, while I handle all the design, the HR, PR, and so on and so forth. The project was kind of started about at least 5, 6 years ago. It's been that long. There has been no much noise about it because we purposely didn't want to. We were kind of struggling with direction it was going to go, and we weren't sure with many things. Then COVID came out of nowhere and then kind of took us by storm. But luckily by then we had a lot of things in place. We had our designs in place. We kind of had to improvise our designs. Our original design on the track was a 3.4 kilometer racetrack, which is good, but was not great. So I kind of wasn't too happy with it. So we decided, you know what, let's kind of change it up a bit. And if we're going to do it, let's make it proper. So we decided, let's go with the largest racetrack in the country. And then we kind of did a little bit of R&D and scaling and seeing different racetracks across the world. And I drew a lot of inspirations from some of the racetracks that I've personally driven on. And I thought the bottom line of all of that was that the racetrack had to have the sense of adrenaline, the sense of scare, the sense of, oh my gosh, you're going to wet your pants. That's what a racetrack had to be. Not something boring and just forever long straights and forever long corners and things like that. That's a bit boring. Why is the Nürburgring as exciting as it is? It's green hell, as they call it. It is called that because it's a place and people keep going back. They keep crashing and keep going back. And that on its own, I feel is, as a race car driver, I feel is that's the excitement, the good old fashioned racing. Like if you remember the Group B rally cars, and when rally cars are coming straight down, people just running out, just missing each one by an inch. That was adventure. That was the excitement, and that's the excitement we wanted to kind of reel back in. And with having regulations changing with FIA and things, with having larger runoff areas, I had to fight with these guys quite a bit to say, no, you know what, can we kind of minimize the runoffs and make it a little bit more scary? We have a lot of elevation changes on our track as well. We have really long straights. Ironically, we have a longer straight than the current Formula One circuit. We have a 1.3 kilometer straight, and our straight's actually got a bit of a kink in it. So you'll be going flat out, and then you actually kink into the corner. So it kind of works out with showing you all your aero as well. So for people who
sounds very, very exciting. Sounds a bit, as you put it yourself, hush hush as well. Can you give us an idea about where that's happening, or is it under the wraps for now?
No, that's fine. See, we are going to be located about 120 kilometers from Bangalore up north towards Hyderabad. It's going to be off the NH 4, I think, the NH4 highway, or I'm not sure it's NH4 or NH7. I always get them mixed up. But it's going to be off that. It's about 40 minutes drive from the Bangalore International Airport. And we'll also have helipad services going from the airport, Bangalore Airport, to our actual racetrack. Ironically, we also have a small airstrip close to our racetrack. And I can't reveal the name of it because then everyone will know where that is. But the government of Andhra Pradesh has given us some authority to use that once our project's ready. So, hey, listen, if you ever wanted to come, you can just come in your private jet straight to the property.
All right. I remember this is taking me back a few years when the F1 track here in Noida, in Greater Noida, came up. At that time, motoring enthusiasts, sports car enthusiasts were all praised for it. But then there was a section of society which said, motorsports, whether it's F1 or otherwise, is a very elitist sport. What is the future of motorsports? What's the present and the future of motorsports in a country like India, in your opinion?
Oh, Shivadeep, this is a hard one to answer because this honestly hasn't been really easy. We're in a country where motorsport wasn't really even recognized as a sport until a couple of years ago. So when we started this project and we were looking out for potential partners and things, it got really hard because people just can't relate to it. If I said, oh, listen, I want to build a hotel, I want to build, an apartment. I had tons of people come and say, let's play ball. But something like this, people can't grasp how it is. And for better or for worse, the fact that Formula One came to India and left and kind of had this vacancy of motorsport in India kind of had a really negative impression on most people, thinking that it's if you go into this, it's an absolute failure. So we had to kind of break a lot of mindsets to re-enter, I suppose, into this field. And surely there's a massive risk in it. But we're hoping.
But Shana, you would agree, sorry to interrupt, but you would agree that motorsport as we know it is currently very limited. It is only a microscopic few here in India who are actually involved and can probably afford to be in any way involved in something like that. Would you agree with that?
I 100% agree, and that's exactly what we're trying to change here. We don't want to have it as a sport for the rich and famous or anything like that. The whole point of us doing this entire exercise and introducing this racetrack is the main feature of this is accessibility. So anyone at any price range or any budget that they have in mind can actually, come on and have a bit of a play and have fun and get into the sport. So we're going to have a racing school as well at the track. And that's going to allow students or, children from the age of like 8 and above to get into karting racing and further progress. These opportunities weren't there. We'll also have a lot of financial aid as well it's the same as a student loan. So we would look at offering all these things to kind of help nurture the next generation of drivers and racers coming into the sport. So I'm hoping that people like us and hopefully more would kind of come up and do things like this, kind of change this narrative of how motorsports in India has been. And at the moment, as you know, motorsports in India, whether you like it or not, has been quite political. And having new faces and just a change of scenery, hopefully, should bring a change to the motorsport fraternity for the better.
Right. To inspire others, as you say, clearly inspiration must have come to you as well, long time back. Tell us something about your own journey towards professional car racing from childhood days to where you are now. I mean, you've pretty much traveled the world, haven't you?
Something like that. I think it all starts with doing something wrong. I must say, I got to be honest about it. I can't lie. My motor racing started when I was, even before I got a license, driving cars and trying to break speed limits. And come on, I'm going to be honest about it, and that's true. But eventually, I realized that I had to fine tune that. And somewhere down the line, a light bulb went off and said, "Well, actually, I'm actually not bad at this. So let's see what happens." And I kind of got into it and followed my heart a little bit. Took the racing off the road, thank goodness. Got into a race car.
Was it in India?
No, actually, no. Part of it was in India, but most of it is in Malaysia. I started racing at the Sepang circuit, Malaysia. That was my first time I've actually been on a racetrack. Wouldn't have a clue what I was doing, just seeing the races and rallies on television. It was a lot different what's on TV to what's in real life. But I think being adventurous and chasing your heart and being borderline reckless, and let's be fair, to be in motorsport, you need to be a bit mad as well. Having all of these concussions, I think I just jumped into it. I didn't look back, and I'm really glad I didn't look back, because I think I would have regretted it massively if I went and did something really boring like, I don't know, being a doctor, a
You,
lawyer, an architect.
you have to be a bit mad. You have to be extremely skilled as well. And in all of this, perhaps exposure is something that's very important. So while you did bit of racing, driving here in India, but you did also go to Malaysia. Now, compared to those countries, foreign countries, in India, here in India, how much is exposure limited, or what are your experiences? What have your experiences been abroad, and how do you compare them to your experiences for the average Indian car or bike enthusiast here in the country? I mean, what
I
can
think
we learn from elsewhere?
I think there's a massive difference. I think firstly, sport needs to be treated as a sport. It's not a place to go and fight with people, argue with people, and you're not, part of winning is losing. I think that's something here a lot more people need to accept and realize. I think a lot of things need to be streamlined. It's really difficult for people to walk into motorsports today, even if they wanted to. There's no proper gateway for motorsports. It takes a while. You need to know somebody to know somebody to know somebody. And once you're in it, then there's a massive process to get into it. In case you need funding, you don't have access to any funding. At least is what I've seen. I'm hoping that that's an avenue people can look at as well. Apart from that, I also think that there is no set format. And I think that's what I feel really disappointed about. Things keep changing like the weather, and formats, I think, in motorsports and racing need to exist for a particular reason, that it is a sport and they need to be governed appropriately. When these things are not in place, I feel that being a part of the sport is not really sport anymore. You're taking the essence of sport out of motorsport,
So
which,
what you're pointing to is red tapeism as well that exists. I mean, we've
pardon?
seen red tapeism,
Oh, yeah,
a
yeah,
really bureaucratic structure.
100%. No doubt about it. I've seen that. I also think, the officials in motorsport need to be a lot more welcoming to newcomers on board. I think there are a lot of walls built up everywhere. And if I didn't know anything and I really like to go race and wanted to get into a car and go do it, honestly, I wouldn't have a clue how. I don't come from a family that has motorsport people, motorsport fraternity oriented people in my family. I'm just me. I'm the first person who's driving and racing. So if I had to start off here, I think I would still be struggling. And this is regardless if you're a guy or a girl. I think it's always a difficult start in India. And even after you start, let's say you're doing really well, and there are some phenomenal drivers in the world of rallying and motor racing in India. But what next? The big question actually is, where do you go from that?
Right.
You've done all the sports, you've won your awards, you're a national champion. Okay, now what? Where do you go? So that's another reason I would think twice to get into motorsports in India, because you have to grow at a certain point, right? So let's assume that you've done really well. You finished the season. Volkswagen Motorsports, I know, offers really nice things. JK Race, JK Tire Racing, whatever. So there are a lot of people who do these things. But my big question is, what happens next? Where can I go? A lot of it also has to do with funding, because, as you know, racing isn't cheap. It's pretty expensive. It's a really expensive sport. And these are the questions I need to ask myself in terms of if I had to restart my entire racing career in India. And I don't know how far I'd get with it. And that's unfortunately the true answer that I would probably give you.
Fair enough. Let's also address the proverbial elephant in the room. And as much as I hate to talk about gender issues in gender being a limiting factor, would you or would you not agree that in motorsports that can be a challenge as well, especially for a budding lady motorcar enthusiast racer? So there are two parts to my question. How much of a limiting factor do you see that to be here in India specifically? And what message do you have for anybody who's watching this, who wants to, any girl, any woman who wants to take car racing as a professional sport?
Well, I honestly think that at the end of the day, motor racing is not a physical sport. So it really doesn't involve you arm wrestling with somebody else, and which it's not like boxing or MMA or something like that. We're actually knocking each other out in cars, yes. But so I've always told people like motor racing's like playing a game of chess. It needs a, like a good skill set, and it needs a good tactical skill set as well. You don't really need arm strength for it. And once you establish that, you realize there's no real difference between a boy driving a car versus a girl driving a car. As long as they're good, they'll still get to the same place. The end result's still the
But
same.
what about mindset?
Okay, so now, I was just coming to that. So that's where all of this adds up. Now, for better or for worse, motorsports has been all across the world a more male, shouldn't say dominated, but more male-oriented sport, right?
Yeah.
But now it's changing across the world, and you're seeing a lot more women coming into motorsports, and it's a really nice thing to see. Now we're having women-oriented series as well. Now, what that does is introduce younger generation a new platform that you can grow into, because in India, for example, coming to this, racing and driving is not something that you would introduce your so-called girl child to. You would kind of keep them safe, maybe even for safety. Maybe parents are scared. Maybe there's a cultural setback. Maybe there are so many things that maybe that people don't really have a definite answer to it. It's ironically, it's actually quite a safe sport compared to a lot more other things. You're actually safe. The car's safe. You're safe. You wear safe equipment. So I think that the biggest concern in all of this is the mindset of parents and one culture up, right? So that's maybe our parents or grandparents and things. Our culture at this age point, things are changing. There are a lot of girls that I know look up to me and see me drive and race and come up to me like, how do you, like, what do you do? I said, just get into a car and drive. And ironically,
What's the weirdest thing? What's the weirdest thing you've heard someone ask you here in India?
I pardon?
What's the weirdest thing that you've heard someone ask you here in India?
Oh,
is there something that stands out?
Yeah. So this is what I get quite commonly, right? I get asked, why was architecture not good enough? Why was interior design not good enough? Why was fashion design not good enough? Why did you have to come and choose motor racing? What is it about that excited you? And it's a question that I honestly don't even have an honest answer to, because it's just another trade. Any girl can do it. You don't need to be a boy or a girl to be into racing. If you've got the right skill set, you can handle the pressure. Get out there and do it. Any girl can do it. Like I said, women do make much better race car drivers than men do. It's just that they need proper training.
Right. It's a lot to do with skill, but I would also just stick my neck out and say, even if it's something as physical as a brute sport, like say boxing, I think if you have the right mindset, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, you can just excel in absolutely anything.
Shivadeep, come on, let's be honest. Today's day and age, who really even cares about all this anymore? It's changing. There's a massive generation change. And with that generation change, you're introducing a real world of openness, if I may say that. And that allows a lot more multicultural, I don't even know what the right word to be, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. It's an open book. Anyone can come and play ball. As long as you got the heart for it, you got the mindset, and there will be challenges, right? The fashion industry has tons of challenges. For any fashion designer to come up, it's going to be impossible initially, and there's a lot of setbacks on that as well. Same like racing, you will find roadblocks that if you're strong enough, you'll get through, and it just takes a strong mind to get through it. And I tell people this: it's what's in your pants doesn't count. It's what's in your head that matters.
Right. Let's just also briefly touch upon aviation. You've, I believe, taken a professional aviation course. You were also training to be a pilot. How come that didn't happen? From land to air, but the air thing didn't seem to have happened. Or is it on the cards as well?
No. So, by profession, I'm actually a pilot. I used to fly professionally. That's what I studied to do. I actually was doing law, and then I dropped out of it because I just was not my cup of tea. Then I joined an aviation school in New Zealand, And then I kind of got into that, started from scratch, started flying, enjoyed it. I got my first job was with a small travel company that I used to take people up and show them whale watching. That was a big thing in New Zealand. We used to also do skydiving as well, which basically I used to be one of the pilots for that. Kind of slowly worked my way up into the airlines for a few years. And then I kind of realized the biggest thing, honestly, I'm not going to lie, the biggest thing that was every time I was out there, I used to look down and go, that looks like a nice, interesting bit of road. And I just had to come back and explore it, right? And I kind of stopped and asked myself, where's my heart? Is it, in this office with the best view in the world, or is it actually down there and just living my heart out? And I think that's when I kind of made the switch to cars and racing, professionally at least. Till then, it was just flying, and I couldn't think past it. I did enjoy flying a lot. Now, flying definitely has a lot more discrimination between genders than motor racing, ironically. And coming out of all of that, it was a great change for me to do something that was thrilling, was faster, was exciting. And to be honest, I think the biggest and the most honest answer I can give you is that aviation had too many rules and regulations. That just didn't work for me. Okay, I can't do rules and regulations,
Right.
so I had to kind of do something that I could bend it a little bit.
Right, Shana. So from what I gather, aviation, whether it's flying in the skies or racing on a track, if you put your mind to it, if you have the skill sets, and regardless of the gender and all such artificial boundaries, you can really, really excel in whatever there is. But, Shana, and correct me if I'm wrong, there needs to be a platform for it. And this platform is where the racetrack in Andhra Pradesh is going to serve, perhaps to make a lot of people realize their dreams, correct? That's the sort of a sum of what I've said.
100%. I hope that what we are doing in our small little way can really help generations that are coming up, especially into this field.
All right, Shana. Thank you so much for taking the time out, Shana, joining us on this episode of HT Auto. Thank you also to our viewers for taking the time out. Do stay tuned for more such interesting interviews. For now, this is all that we have. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.